I've spent a lot of time operating on the FT8 mode on all sorts of bands from HF all the way up even to 3.4 gigahertz. And over time, I've continually adjusted and changed some of the settings in my station to maximize the ability that I can use to work DX and other stations as I need to. So in this video, I'm going to cover the essential settings, the operating techniques that I use, as well as some practical lessons that have made a big difference for me. So if you're setting FT8 up either for the first time or you're just starting to use it, these tips will be for you. They'll help you decode more stations and they'll also help you better to work the DX. So the first thing that I wanted to sort of cover, and I've got obviously FT8 here running at the moment, is to use the most up-to-date WSJT-X version, keep it updated. So the latest version, stable version, is constantly always being updated. Always being released. The latest version you can download from the WSJT-X GitHub. I'll put a link below in the description. This also has not only the latest release version, but also the release notes. I strongly urge you that if you are updating to check the release notes, because there are often a lot of different updates, bug fixes, and feature improvements. So if you go in and you read those release notes here in, say, the text file, as you can see, there is also the previous versions as well, all of the changes in those versions. So it's always a good thing to go through to see if the update maybe has a feature that you might be looking for or that might improve your station as well. Now, updating WSJT-X is reasonably straightforward. All you got to do is just download the latest release here. It'll take you to the GitHub for the latest release, and then you've got the Mac OS, Windows, and Linux versions here. Now, as far as my machine, I'm running Windows. All I had to do is download the file and just install. It was a next install. Your existing settings should normally be retained. You don't have to uninstall it, then reinstall it. It should just install straight over the top. Now, the next thing that I would talk about is choosing the right radio interface. So depending on what radio you have will depend on how you connect it to your PC. So modern radios, they have a built-in USB audio sound card and also cat control, and it makes it really easy. It's one USB cable that plugs directly into the radio and then into the computer. You go into the settings, and there are already common radios listed here in rig control, and you just set up all of your cat control settings and your audios and everything, and it's just good to go. Obviously, I'm not going to cover all of the radios in this video. I have done previous more common radios and how to set them up. If you want to check those out, then they will be linked below and also at the end of this video too. But if you do have an older radio, such as one that uses a mini DIN or a full-size DIN or a 3.5mm jack on them, they can be a little bit harder to interface. So sometimes you either have to build your own or you have to purchase something. Now, there are a couple of interface options that I recommend. The first one is probably the DigiRig. So the DigiRig is a straightforward, mostly plug-and-play option, and it supports a wide range of radios, different cables that you can use to plug into your particular radio. You can just essentially plug in a USB cable into the other side and straight into your PC. It's essentially that USB functionality in all of those modern radios that you can use to interface to older radios. The operators who enjoy building or modifying equipment, they can also use other boards, such as the Toge digital interface board. Myself and Steve, KM9G at temporarily offline, we both sell these. You can install these into compatible radios. Once you interface your radio to your computer, it's not just WSJT-X that you can run as well. You can run a variety of different programs. You can run SSTV, WinLink, APRS, JS8 call as well. So you can use all of those digital modes. Now, once you've got your radio all connected up, you've got it set up on your machine, the next thing you need to look at is timing. So computer clock timing. So FT8 mode and other modes in WSJT-X, they rely heavily on timing to make sure that your computer clock is synchronized with the station that you're trying to decode. So even if you have a couple of seconds difference, then that can struggle with decodes and you might miss decodes. So you'll notice here that some of these stations that I'm decoding here, there's a DT value. That's the time difference value. And you see how a lot of these are less than 1 second. They're all sort of 0.2, 0.3, 0.1, 0.6. As long as they are within a 2 second or so tolerance, then I should be able to decode all of those stations. So if your time's out by quite a bit, you might find that either people won't decode you or you won't be able to decode them. The easiest way to fix this is to just run a time synchronization software. So don't rely on the time synchronization of, say, Windows. I'd get another application. The one that I use is NetTime. So network time, you can see here that this updates. I think I've got this updating every 15 minutes or 20 minutes or something like that. And basically what this does is it will go, and if I click update now, you'll see it'll pull the time, and now my offset is about 13 milliseconds or something. So now I've got my accurate time. It does this all the time, over and over and over, just to make sure that your clock doesn't drift out, and then you won't miss any decodes. So I've done a separate video on a full WSJT-X install, and that includes the installation and the configuration of NetTime. So if you want to see that, then there will be a link below that you can use to check out. Down here in the left-hand corner, you'll see this little audio meter here that is in the green. It's showing currently 64 dB here at the moment. This checks the receive level of the audio coming from your radio into your PC, into WSJT-X. Now, you want to just set your audio level correctly here. So if you have too little level, then you won't be able to obviously hear much and you won't be able to decode too much. If it's too high, then you'll start to overdrive your PC and you'll sometimes miss decodes again. So it's always very critical. So there's a couple of ways that you can adjust this. Now, because my radio is USB connected, it's actually reasonably easy. All I need to do is just open up my sound control, and I'll bring this up here and show you. You'll see here that I've got my sound controls here with all of my different devices. I've got quite a few here. If I go to the recording tab, this is the microphone tab from the PC. Now, if we scroll down here, you'll see this one, microphone USB audio codec. So any radios that are connected primarily via USB, they'll come up with a USB audio codec sound card. So if I go into here and I go into levels, you'll see my level's set at about 54 on the level here. Now, if I reduce this all the way down to, say, 3, you'll see how my level has dropped, and it's dropped all the way down to, say, 19 or 20 there. If I go all the way to 0, you'll see, there we go, it's dropped all the way to 0. If I just go maybe 1 or, say, 1, there I'm down there at 4 or 5 dB, and now it's gone to orange. So if we just hover over this little meter here, it actually tells us that 30 dB is recommended only when there's noise present. Green is good, red is when clipping may occur, and yellow is too low. So if I crank this all the way up to 100, you'll see there that I'm overdriving it. So I've got mine set. I've set this so that I move my radio over to a quiet portion of the spectrum. I then adjust the level around about 30, 40 dB or so. And the reason why it's quite high at 64 dB at the moment is because it's receiving all of these stations up here in the waterfall. So as long as you're in the green, then you should be right and you've got it adjusted correctly. Now, another thing with receive audio too, and you'll notice here that across the spectrum that I've got sort of this blue all across, and I'm seeing all of these signals as I go across all the way from down here at 0 all the way up to sort of up to 2900, 3000 or so. Now, sometimes some people have noticed that they will only see a very small slice of this, and there will be stations that they can't decode sort of very low or very high, and that's because of the filter bandwidth in their radio. So don't use narrow filtering in your radio. Make sure that it is set to wide. Now, if I quickly, if I can, bring up my radio here. If I open up my filters there, you'll see that the bandwidth is currently set to 3.2K. So I've got a wide bandwidth. Now, if I selected, or say if I reduce that bandwidth down, if I select that and I go down to, say, let's go, what's that, 2 kilohertz there. If we go back to what that actually looks like here on the screen, you'll notice here that now I've got this dark patch here at the bottom. I've got this dark patch here at the top, and we've effectively narrowed our bandwidth. Now, if I go even more than that, let's go down to, say, 1 kilohertz, then we go back to having a look, and that makes the problem even worse. And now you'll see that all of these other stations that I was decoding here earlier, the waterfall was actually quite busy. Now, I don't have as many. I've got maybe one here, I've got sort of one here, I've got a smattering of stuff all in here, but I'm missing a whole heap, and that's because my bandwidth is no longer wide enough. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that our bandwidth is nice and wide. I set mine to just above 3 kilohertz, 3.2 kilohertz, there we go. You can set 3.6, you could go as wide as you want as well, but the SSB bandwidth is about 3 kilohertz, so I've just gone just higher than that. And for me, that's worked very well. Now, the other thing that you'll notice too on my radio is that my mode up here, USB-D1, so that means that I am set into the USB data mode. So if I go here to SSB just as standard, if I go to USB just as standard there, you'll notice that I'm not in the data mode. I'd recommend that if you are running this on a radio with a USB sound card in it, to actually select the data mode and run it separately there from the USB mode. It just makes it a lot easier, especially when you are selecting in WSJT-X frequencies. If you're changing, then it all does it on the data packet mode here. The next thing to check is to make sure that your Transmit Audio and ALC is set correctly. Now, there's a couple of ways to do this, and this is the main way that I do it. If we pick a clear frequency here, and we've got now this portion here where there aren't any stations. If I just hit the tune button and we go back over to the radio, you'll notice that at the moment we're putting out 100 watts. We probably don't need to put out 100 watts. Let's just back that off a little bit, 50 watts there. You'll notice there that I've got some ALC. You see that little blue line there. Now what we want to do is here in WSJT-X, we've got this power slider down the right-hand side here. This is not really power. This is gain coming out of the WSJT-X software into the microphone input of your radio. So if you want to adjust your level, your transmit level correctly, this is what I would do. What I'll do is I'll hit tune, and if you watch here, as I adjust this slider here up and down, you'll notice that if I go up, you'll see that the ALC starts to increase. If I go down, the ALC starts to decrease. What we want to do is we want to reduce this ALC level until it just disappears or it's not on the scale anymore, which is about there. Now you'll see that I'm getting full output power. I'm getting close to the 50 watts that I specified earlier, and we've got no ALC. So this is the ideal spot that we want to set. Now this is similar across all other radios. This is just I'm obviously demonstrating here on my 7610, but if you've got any other radio, it'll have a different ALC meter on there, but effectively they're all set the same. So we want to be able to transmit. We want our ALC level there to be as low as possible. I've got one small little bar there that's kind of there. That's fine. And we want our output power to be showing as the rated or close to the rated output power that we've specified. Now, the reason for this is that if we have too little ALC, this drops back our output power. If we have too much ALC, we start to overdrive and have excessive, or we could have wider or distorted signal coming out of our radios. So the next tip is understanding what station you are actually decoding. I know that a lot of beginners to FT8 or WSJT-X, they don't quite understand what they're actually hearing and what they're actually seeing on the screen. So here you could see on my band activity, I've got a lot of call signs here, and some with signal reports, some with grid squares and all that sort of thing. And as they scroll through, it can be quite difficult to keep up. But you'll notice that which one am I actually hearing, or what am I actually hearing? Some of them have countries, some of them don't. So the easiest way to look at this is that in a standard exchange, the final call sign shown in that message identifies the station that transmitted that message, or the station that we're hearing. So if you have a look here, you'll see if we just untick the monitor button so that we can stop the scrolling. You'll see here, let's have a look at this, N3LAG. So this station here, this last call sign here in this message that I'm just showing here, that signal I received directly here from N3LAG. Now what was happening is that he was giving a signal report of -17 to this other station, TA3JOH. Now if you have a scroll over here, you'll see that that signal was -9. So I was hearing N3LAG at -9. Now if you confirm this, if I actually double click on that, you'll notice that that's actually just enabled the transmit automatically, because that's what it does. But you'll see that if I double click on that particular message, all of a sudden it's automatically now gone to call N3LAG with my grid square in there. So you can see that that is an easy way to identify what you're actually hearing. And the best thing to do is to just pay attention to who's actually calling or what you're actually hearing before you actually go and call that station back. One of the things that I see is CQDX, responding to CQDX calls. Now, in a lot of these here, you'll see that these are just plain CQ calls. There's actually one there that I'll just show if I scroll up that I saw. Where was it? There it is, CQJA. Now, in the CQ field down here in the bottom, this actually is, you can free text this and you can put CQDX. In this instance, this station's actually put CQJA. So what he's actually doing is he's actually calling CQ for JA, which is Japan. He's calling CQ from the US to Japan. He's not calling anyone else. The same too with CQDX. If I was calling CQDX, it generally means that I am calling a station outside of my country. Now, that means that if you see any stations that are calling CQDX and they are local to you, and when I say local, I mean probably in the same country, then it's probably a good bet that they're actually not looking for stations inside your own country, and they probably won't respond. It's just one of those things that they're looking for a specific area. They're looking for DX, international contacts, and in this case, they've actually specified a particular country, JA, or a particular continent. So it's just always a good thing to just respect the targeting call signs or the targeting calls they're trying to make. It reduces the congestion and also gives that station that's calling for these DX stations a better chance of working them as well. Now, FT8 transmissions alternate between two 15-second periods, which is odd and even. You'll see that there's this box here which is TX even first, or the opposite, if you click that, is TX odd second. So one group obviously transmits on one period, and then while the other one transmits on a second period, so that you don't clash or you don't transmit both at the same time. So when you answer a CQ call, WSJT-X automatically changes the period for you, so you actually don't need to worry about this box. But if you are calling CQ yourself, sometimes it's good to look at the waterfall, see when it's less congested. Sometimes choosing a quieter period will reduce the chances of interference and reduce the chances that you're going to, increase the chances that you're going to be decoded. And it also means that you avoid transmitting maybe over local stations as well. But if I'm calling CQ, I want to find a bit here in the waterfall that that is clear. So you can see that I've got this red bar here, which is going down. Now, if I actually hold down Control and then select a frequency, or I can do it down here, I can select a transmit frequency down here. Now, that piece of the slice of the spectrum is free. Now, what I want to do is I just want to make sure that I don't call over the top of anyone. So I look at each period and I can see that each period is pretty clear. So I can pretty much transmit on any period that I want to there. So it's always good to just listen first and just to check where you're transmitting. Now, another thing that I'll also encourage everyone to do is to tick this box, hold TX frequency. Now, what this does is that if I select a frequency here of 2229, that means that I am going to always transmit in this slot. So I can pick a quiet slot here on the waterfall. Now, if I go and respond to this CQ call here, let's just stop transmitting, you'll see here that the green bar has moved here because he is down at 1095, or that station is down at 1095, and I'm up here at 2000. Now, that is very good for being able to make sure, again, that I'm transmitting in a quiet section. Now, I don't need to move my frequency here to call him down where he is. because I'm already in a clear spot up here. And if I do, I'm probably just going to be competing with other people. So it's always best to keep that hold TX frequency button ticked, because that is one of the best tips to use and will mean that you will increase your chances of being decoded. Now, if you want to speed up your, obviously FT8 is quite fast, but if you do want to speed up your calling, you'll notice here that the first message is a grid square. Now, most of the time you don't really need to send a grid square. You can if you want to, but if you double click the TX1 button here, it actually disables that message. So what this means is that every time you respond to somebody, you'll notice here when I responded to KC5UZI, it sent my grid square. Now, that just increases the amount of time that it takes to make the contact when I could have just sent a signal report to him. So if I actually select another station here now, let's say we select this one, and you'll see that straight away it's now sending -13. It's actually sending a signal report. Now, the other thing that you should also be aware of is when you are calling CQ is to select the correct setting down here. So at the moment, I've got CQ first. If you actually hover over this box, and this is the great thing about WSJT-X that I didn't mention before, is that if there's anything that you need to know about what it does, you can just hold your mouse over it and it will tell you, which is really good. So here I've got CQ first. So this determines what happens when you call CQ. So at the moment, you could see there that I've currently got my mine set to CQ first, so my software will automatically respond automatically to the first decoded reply to your CQ. Now, you can select different parameters there. You can select maximum distance, maximum dB, minimum dB, or you can select none so that you have to manually go and select each CQ or respond to each call manually. So that's good. I just leave mine on first because I figure that the first decoded call sign, if you're first in, best dressed, that's the one that I do. And then obviously I go through and I respond to all of the others that respond to my CQ calls. Now, when you respond to CQ calls, you'll see that they will appear in a different color. I think it is in orange here on the right-hand side, on the RX frequency side. And then, so it's easy for you to keep track of what stations you have worked in that moment and the next ones that you need to work as you go along. The other thing about FT8 is that it is not necessarily a low power mode. It is a weak signal mode. So that means just run the amount of power that you require. So for instance, on HF, sometimes 5 or 10 watts is more than enough. Sometimes if you want to get even further out and the propagation conditions are no good, then you do need to bump your power up. Or if you're operating on a band, higher frequency band, say if it's on 6 meters or 2 meters, then you do need to bump your power up even higher. So just always use the minimum amount of power required that you need to actually make the contact. If you're a beginner and you want to get set up with FT8 or WSJT-X, then there is a link to video above which goes through that step by step.